So I was thinking of something Jan Willis said very early on in her series of talks this last weekend, which was that the Buddha was an activist. Yeah. And some people may not agree with that. They say, Buddha just sat there meditating. He was so serious. He didn't get involved in the world. In fact, he was against the world. He talked about renouncing and leaving the world. So how can you be an activist if, you just want out of samsara and you're meditating all the time? Okay. And so some people criticize the Dharma uh, or criticize practitioners saying, oh, they don't have anything to do with the world. Actually, we live in the world, so we definitely have something to do with it, don't we? Yeah, becoming a practitioner doesn't make you not live in the world. And no matter where you go in samsara, you're always in relationship to other sentient beings. So, what makes the Buddha an activist? So, I was thinking, as soon as the Buddha spoke the Dharma, he was an activist. Yeah. Why? Because what he's teaching is pretty radical. Yeah. Pretty radical and really makes you look at your own mind, makes you look at society, makes you look at your assumptions. And as soon as he started teaching and getting people to examine their lives using reasoning, that's pretty much being an activist. Now, what's interesting is he didn't get people to examine their lives by using emotion, like at a rally, because that's what we often think of as activists. You're at a rally and oh, those people are doing this to that our society. We've got to stand up to them, and what they're doing is wrong. We usually think of that as activism. But I think it's more what you say, not the situation you're in which you say it, that makes you an activist. And plus the fact that Buddha is encouraging people to change themselves, and implicitly, by changing yourself, you change society, by using reasoning, not by using emotion, not by pitting people against an external enemy and telling them that they have to fight against injustice. Rather, Buddhist activism, your enemy is ignorance, anger, and attachment, self-centered thought. Yeah. And you use reasoning plus deep meditation, plus to get you to personal experience to overcome that enemy. So it doesn't involve harming any other living beings in society or making an us versus them kind of mentality. In fact, Buddhist activism makes it just us because we're all in the same boat. We all want to be happy. We don't want to suffer. Yeah. And so even if you take that premise and you're trying to uh, instigate social change, you're going to get a much better result than making us and them. And these people who are doing things. But if you really, here are a bunch of people who mean well, who are tremendously confused, very ignorant, yeah, who are creating the causes of suffering for themselves and others. And so they're people that are worthy of compassion. And then out of compassion, we may try and change their views and try and, work in society. But it's not because we want to harm those people or damage them in any kind of way. In some ways, it's almost like you want to protect people from themselves. Yeah. I mean, this should be also, why do some people get imprisoned? Not for punishment. Punishment doesn't work. Nagarjuna says you you imprison people to protect them from themselves because they create so much negative karma and harm so many other living beings. But it's not to punish them. Yeah. In fact, remember, he tells them to make sure they have doctors and clean rooms and barbers to pull their teeth. Yeah. So, when you really think about what the Buddha did, he had a profound impact not only on individuals, but on all of society. Yeah. And if you look at how Buddhism has been historically, it's definitely impacted the societies that it's been in, simply by the force of people practicing the Buddha's teachings. They don't have to even go on the streets to affect society. Yeah. Of course, in America, we like to hang out in the streets. So, you know, maybe there's some of that. But it has to be done with the same kind of attitude that the Buddha used. Okay, but it's definitely activism, isn't it? As soon as you tell people ignorance, anger, and clinging attachment are the sources of your suffering, and if you want to be happy, you have to work on those inner factors in your own mind. Whoa! Yeah. If somebody really hears that on a deep level, so much changes. Yeah. Even the Buddha establishing precepts. First precept, don't kill. For all the people who take that precept and keep it, it's an amazing contribution to world peace. Yeah, that's activism, isn't it? Okay, so we're following in the tradition of our teacher, the Buddha, who was an incredible activist. He actually interceded sometimes, but sometimes two groups of his disciples. What was it? The Sakyas and the Lichavis, whatever it is. They were going to fight over water. You think fighting over water just happens this century. They were fighting over a river or something like that. The Buddha sat him down and said, "Hey, everybody, this isn't going to work." And he got them to settle it by some sort of peaceful means. And he definitely influenced the rulers at his time. I mean, look at Nagarjuna. Isn't he an activist writing Precious Garland? Wow. Yeah. It's amazing he didn't get arrested for stating those ideas. Well, that's because he was teaching the king, you know. But, what he was suggesting was pretty radical, wasn't it? Using the government's wealth for the welfare of all of society, making sure people had the health care they needed, the recreation opportunities that help create peaceful families. Yep, he had a lot to say about social structures. Yeah, eliminating racism.
I think the important thing to mention is the Buddha worked on his own mind before he went out and taught others.
Yes.
Yeah, and so he did retreat from the world for a while to look at the mind and see the nature of things.
Yeah.
That's what made his teachings so important to us.
Right. Yeah, very true. But his whole motivation, even though he sometimes stayed in solitude, was the benefit of all beings.
I think one thing that signals to me the activism of the Buddha is how he taught personal responsibility of your own mind and your actions. So it's not blaming everyone else out there for what is, but it's saying, well, I have a part to play. And for me, that's really a key factor of activism, is looking towards oneself and saying, what can I do internally and then externally?
Yeah.
Oh, I think too what inspires me a lot is how the Buddha created a sangha, right? The community that has lasted 2,600 years. It wasn't a one-man movement that ended with him. It's, that's genuine activism, I think, is generational and sustainable.
Ah, right. Yes.
And we have a community dedicated to ethics and peace till today.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not just a short-term movement that,